you are required to report what you found. This report is public. It goes to the people of Gilmoril. You can be wrong, but as an expert, no one will question the truth that you've given them.
Hello, adventurers, and welcome back to Hedron. I am Chibi, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Brad from Gilmoril Technogothic Nightmare. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your game, especially for those who've never heard of it before?
Absolutely. Gilmoril Technogothic Nightmare is a game about hunting monsters, but not just any monsters. You're hunting technocytes, and technocytes are mechanical monstrosities that take on the form of myths and legends from history. You, the players, will play Venera, monster hunters who in the past were just sort of simple magicians and lore keepers, but have now been called upon to actually rise to the current threat of these monstrosities.
I've played games, RPGs like Monster Hunter, and I see that you have aesthetics that are akin to Witcher, Bloodborne, and Horizon Zero Dawn, a personal favorite of mine. And how does that exactly play out?
So very much from the beginning, while creating this game, I wanted a game that focused on the hunt rather than the fight. And also I wanted a game that focused more on the players being an expert rather than the narrator, which is what we call a DM, just telling you things as you make certain rolls. So the entire game plays out much like a monster hunt in the Witcher 3 video game, where you have a bestiary that slowly unlocks more information, and that comes in the book that you get. And throughout the hunt, the players have full access to the book to look up clues and monster details and all these other sorts of information that might help them hunt down this monster and come up with a solution. And importantly, at no point is the narrator telling them what to do. They get to decide what to do, and the narrator simply tells them what happens after they do it.
You have this intended for 1 to 6 players. How does that work exactly?
So because the game is about discovering how the monster works over time and figuring out its vulnerabilities, the players are actually handed a blank monster sheet at the start of the game that they fill in over time. Normally, the narrator has their own sheet that's already been filled in. However, if you are playing solo, you don't have to have that. You can just play the game and learn from what's happening. There's plenty of tables that generate crime scenes and different types of damage and clues that can be left behind, and you can piece those together into a story of hunting a monster. Now, the only difference is when you're playing alone, obviously there's no real answer that was written beforehand, so whatever you come up with will usually just end up being correct, but there are mechanics that sort of change that. There are mechanics that make it that even though that's what you've come up with, it's not necessarily right.
I feel like that adds a lot of intrigue and, as your backer kit page says, mystery, and I love that. How exactly does a hunt work? What are the mechanics behind that?
So a hunt, put simply, is the time frame in which a particular monster is active and able to be hunted down. So you already have a little bit of a time frame involved. Each hunt is developed into chapters, which are specific sections of time where the players are active and able to hunt the monster down. Usually in any given hunt, there's 3 to 5 chapters, and each chapter encompasses a specific location over a specific time frame with specific characters. As the players move through and find things and travel from location to location, time passes. Each time passes, you get closer and closer to the end of a particular chapter. You just kind of have to come up with an answer in time. You don't really get a chance to think about it for too long. You know, the narrator is constantly reminding you of the flow of time. Importantly, at the end of the hunt, whether you caught the monster or it got away, or you think you've hunted down the right one and you think you got the answer right, you are required to report what you found. This report is public. It goes to the people of Gilmoril, but most importantly, it's for everyone around the table. And it's just the players telling the narrator what they think happened. And from that point on, that story is what is considered true.
Oh, that's
It
really
doesn't
neat.
change the events of what happened, importantly. You can be wrong, But as an expert, no one will question the truth that you've given them.
It adds a little bit of lore that your character gives back into the world and has that living, immersive environment to it. I really like that.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question I have is, for the player's experience, how difficult is it to make a character, and can you use that character multiple times over for different hunts?
Yeah, so making a character, I like to think, is very easy. I haven't had anyone have difficulty with it so far. There's 8 steps to making a character. It starts with the simple things like name, you give a little description, like a first impression of what people might think of the character when they see them. You get into the more difficult stuff, like what kind of traits they have. These are things like being particularly big, which lets you roll more dice, or being particularly quick, which lets you move through obstacles without having to roll for it. Small things like that that build up over time. As you level up, you'll get more and more of these traits. But then you pick things like your luck type, which is what the narrator uses to determine things outside of your character's control. All of these things build up into your character, and then from there you use that to get your derived aptitude scores and stats. But ultimately, that's all math that just has to be done once right near the beginning, and you never touch it again. Most of the time you get a character made within 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can just start playing straight away.
Nice.
As for using the characters in multiple hunts, yes, the game is designed to show the career of your character across many years. Each hunt has a few months gap between it, and you actually level up at the start of each year that passes. So it's sort of the point is that you get to see these characters grow. However, a lot of people have said that they wouldn't mind changing hunters between hunts, and that's absolutely allowed as well. In fact, I kind of like the episodic nature of it, and getting to see different characters approach different problems. However, there is only one other major conceit to the character creation for Gilmoril, and that is all of the traits and abilities that you have access to are the ones that the monsters have access to. So by learning your own character over time, you learn more about how the monsters are going to behave and act, and what abilities they might have as well.
I actually really like how all of that is set up, especially with, like you mentioned, the episodic nature that you can have with it. I know that some players that I've DM'd have preferred keeping their player character for a long time and watching that growth, but then others really enjoy the idea of coming up with new characters, and I feel like that's really nice to serve both. You mentioned leveling up. Can different levels play together, or is it intended for a specific, like everybody being level 5, for example?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Different levels can play together. So the increase in level, all that happens is you get to pick a new trait. So when you pick a new trait, you get a new special ability. This could be, as I said, just being a particularly large person and getting more dice to roll for certain things. This could be being able to literally sniff out different ingredients from around the world, or all the way up to some more special abilities like rolling the largest dice type at night, whereas you always roll the smallest dice type during the day. So yeah, these traits kind of are always special, but everyone has access to them over time. Higher level characters can play with lower level characters without issue, because the traits are the same traits. You just might have a few more of them. And importantly, the monsters, being built just like regular characters, are just high level characters, really, because the character sheet and the traits and all that don't represent you as a person. They represent your ability as a hunter. And that's all the monsters are. The monsters are just hunters of people, and you are hunters of monsters.
I really like that juxtaposition of the hunters versus the monsters, and I really do appreciate the shared trait system that you have. I think that's really unique, and I really am interested in finding out more about that. For the base system, how does your game operate? There's D6 based games, there's D20 based games like D&D. How does your game run?
So Gilmoril runs on a step die system. It runs from D4 through to D12. Your lowest aptitude scores, of which you have 3, physical, mental, and artifice. The lowest, they will start at a D4, And as you level them up, you'll move up through the dice. How it works then is whenever you roll a die, if you roll a 3 or higher on it, you succeed. So as you go up on the dice, you just get more and more likely to succeed. Following up on that, whenever a character rolls a 1, they hesitate, and that moves on into other issues as well. So as you level up and you get bigger and bigger dice, you get less and less likely to hesitate and thus feel more and more skilled. For any keen-eyed viewers out there, they may have noticed that the chance of failure on a die is actually quite low, especially once you get to the high end. That's on purpose, because Gilmoril is not just a game about passing or failing on a particular thing you're trying to do. It's also about trying to be correct. So a lot of the difficulty of the game comes from picking the right action, not just rolling well.
I really like how scaling up the dice allows you to essentially indicate how much more proficient at your skills and your abilities you're getting. And I think that there's a lot of games that kind of miss that aspect, even video games, where as you get more proficient in something, it doesn't necessarily get easier. It doesn't feel like to be able to do things. And I think that that's a really nice way of indicating that. And I don't know, I think it'd be pretty fun to try it out myself. What are some of the other systems within Gilmoril?
Well, there's a few. As I mentioned before, one of the big subsystems is the luck system, which is determining things outside of your control. It's also very helpful in solo play. How it works is every character, whether they have actual stats or not, has a luck type: odds, evens, highs, or low. And when you want to determine luck for a particular set of outcomes, you simply roll a d8. So there I rolled a 4. So a 4 is a low even number. So anyone with lows or evens is in luck, and anyone with highs or odds is out of luck. So if I was trying to open a door and the monster is waiting on the other side of it to pounce at me, if I had highs, I'm out of luck, and if the monster had evens, it's in luck. So I open the door, and the monster just slams straight through right into me. But there's also 4 other possible outcomes from that single roll. And depending on how many characters you have with different motivations and actions they're trying to accomplish at that time, there's just so many variations of what could potentially happen. And all of it is made to represent things completely out of your control. So there's no way to feel bad about it. It's not that you rolled low and the whole weapon rack fell upon you and you got hurt. It's nothing like that. It's just simple bad luck or good luck. You know, you go to try and find the alchemist in the city, and you roll and you're in luck. They're there, or you're out of luck and they're not home at the moment. You've got to go elsewhere.
Okay.
On that note, actually, there is alchemy as well. Alchemy is a version of crafting that's more mystical than physical, in that it starts with certain kinds of potions. You've got things like the horse heart elixir, which makes you very fast for a very short amount of time, or something like narcoloid, which is a special brew which staves off the effects of any injury or infection for a very short time. Alchemy works by taking ingredients with seemingly no properties that match what you're going for and trying to cram them together with magic to turn into what you ultimately need. There's a whole subsystem of going through and doing that, which is very fun and interesting and a little bit random sometimes. And ultimately, you can get to what you need eventually. However, as always, there has to be a downside. When you take these particular potions at the end of the chapter, you will then roll for a side effect for each potion you consumed. And these can be anything from you feel great and everything's normal, all the way down to everyone around you gets launched 5 paces back into a wall.
Oh my goodness.
The old wild magic table, essentially, except it's a mix and match table where the target is randomized as well as the effect. So you might end up with the monster in front of you getting a big boost to its armor instead of you. You don't know. However, there is also, I know a lot of people will like this, a herbalism subsystem where you mix different ingredients with their own effects into salves or poultices or intoxicants These are things, like maybe you just need some aloe to heal some burns, so you mix that up with something, or you need some feverfew to cure a headache from one of the victims. But it's not just positive effects. There are, as we know, herbs that cause more issues in people. But beyond just poisonous herbs, we really wanted to focus in on the idea that the dose makes the poison, which is a very real concept. If you use too much of a certain thing, it may flip around and turn into something awful. One of the herbs we have, it cures anxiety until you use too much of it, at which point it flips over and it causes very intense anxiety.
Oh no.
Now, this subsystem may sound a little strange to deal with in a monster hunting game, but there's different types of treatments people might need. You might need to heal yourself from a monster's wounds. It's just one more lever that the players can use and interact with to help them get through this Technogothic nightmare.
It's really interesting. I know that games can feel like there's a system there that they just put off to the side and you can interact with it, but it doesn't feel very meaningful. I love how forefront this is brought, where there's thought and depth to it. And previously, you had also mentioned that both players and monsters can pull from the same traits. Can monsters also use alchemy?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. In the book, the players are given a bunch of tomes. These tomes are like alchemy, herbalism, there's a magic tome, there's a few other things. The monsters pull from all of those as well. In fact, because they are mechanical in nature, they don't have venom. So if they want to be poisonous, like something like a manticore or a wyvern, they have to mix the poison themselves from herbs. And that can actually be part of the investigation. A player may need to figure out what herbs were used in a specific kind of poison. Maybe they'll need to use that to figure out where the monster's getting these herbs from, because they have to get them from somewhere. Is someone helping them do it? Are they collecting them themselves? Does that help you narrow down your search? All of these things, being very detailed, can feel like a lot to a lot of players, but once you get into it, it's really just detail that you can use to make assumptions and make leaps, and you are expected to do that. And it just leads to a world where you knowing what you as the player are capable of means that you become just ever better at knowing what the monster is capable of. And it's a really, really fun way to play these kind of games.
Yeah. I agree, honestly. I think that's really interesting, and it adds a lot of intrigue and not just mystery, but also just kind of like a puzzle almost. Is like figuring out what exactly this robotic monster in front of you, at least in your example, could potentially be using, or how to take them down. Speaking of taking them down, I've played some of the games that we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? I usually have taken monster parts off of them or done a skilled takedown of a robotic creature. How does that work in Gilmoril? Is it just combat, or is there a non-combat way of doing it too?
Well, there are non-combat ways of doing it. In fact, the combat is pretty optional for most hunts. You have an entire group of characters called the Silver Guard, who are monster killers, whereas you are a monster hunter. So if your group wants, you can do the hunting part, and once you figure it all out, you can give them the tools they need and they can try and go off and do it instead. It's out of your hands at that point. The narrator will end up having to resolve that themselves, but it is optional. Beyond that, there's not just mechanical monsters, there are magical ones. And in those cases, while you can fight them, and you may even be able to win against them, they're not quite as corporeal as the mechanical ones. And in those instances, sorry, my dogs are going nuts. And in those instances, what you'll find is there is a different way of approaching it. For magical monsters, they will have a source, which is where the magic comes from, an intention, what they're trying to do, and a target, who they're doing it to. And if at any point around the table, a player says those three things correctly out loud, the magic is dispelled and it stops right there and then. And that's actually how all magic works in the game. it sort of leads to this ignorance is bliss. When there's positive, helpful magic, you kind of don't want to think about it too much. You want to let it be mysterious. But the second it's starting to harm someone, you want to start trying to figure it out. And it's not about the characters doing something specific or some kind of ritual to show that they understand it. It's about the players understanding it. And it leads to this sort of meta narrative where, because you are ultimately the mind of your character, if you get it, they get it, whether they want to or not. And then the magic's gone. And I guess there's sort of a meta theme there from myself, where the more I've learnt about a lot of RPG systems, the less magical they've felt, the less fun, and I kind of wanted to tribute that in a way, you know. Once you get it, the magic kind of goes away.
That's really interesting. I really like how that whole spoken spell thing can kind of dispel, I guess, the spell that's in works, and you have to kind of think of just being a little bit more present of what you're saying or doing, and not accidentally getting rid of something that might be beneficial, as you mentioned. So that's really cool.
Thank you. On top of that, I will say, as much as that's how you deal with magical monsters, the techno-sites, the mechanical ones, you don't always need to fight them either if you don't want. You know, maybe you set a trap for them and they spring it and it captures them. Maybe you convince them to run away. They can speak. They are fully functional robots. They can, in fact, speak and hold a conversation, but they're not sentient. They're programmed. So if you can figure out what they're trying to do, what their goals are, you maybe can drive them away and send them off somewhere else.
Interesting.
Maybe not always, but it is an option, and you can always try. And, you know, at the end of the day, whether you fought the monster or not, you can say you did. Yeah,
Fair.
it's kind of the point of the report. It's up to you to tell us what happened, and people will believe you up until they have a reason not to.
That's very fair. I actually really like that, and I feel like that gives a little bit more light of how the reports kind of come in. So.
Yeah, I think as a nice tagline for me personally when writing everything about this game has been that it's a horror setting, but it's not a horror game. It's a mystery game. It's a game about you being a very skilled expert more than anything else. So I came at it from the position of, how would an expert be able to approach these things? While the narrator is going to describe scary things, and these monsters are somewhat terrifying, the point of being a player with this whole book of information in front of you is that you get to kind of demystify it, you know? You get to approach it from a place of not being scared. Because the monsters are made the same way as the players, yes, they are higher level than you, but there's 5 of you and 1 of them usually. You can work around that. You can approach things in a way where you have the upper hand. And the monsters aren't foolish, you know, they don't want to be deactivated. They may not fight to the death. They may choose to run instead. So there's a little bit of psychology to it. There's a little bit of choosing your approach in the way you want to do it. And the players really do get a lot of choice on how they want to be this expert hunter. And because they're the expert, they don't get questioned on it. But the narrator still gets to control what they're going up against and how it prepares for them in kind.
I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, for me, it was sort of focusing on the collaborative part. So the narrator comes up with everything, gets it ready, tells them what's happening, but they sort of go hands off at the end there. Because I feel like that can be one of the reasons why in some games, you know, sometimes as a DM you have trouble letting go of your little, like, the cool story you've made, and you don't want to ruin it because, like, this is cool, guys, come on. Or like, you can't help but tell them, you can't help but give them a peek behind the curtain and say, oh, if you didn't do that, this is what would have happened. But at Gilmoril, the way it's set up, it sort of encourages not doing that, because the players sort of get their fun moment as well. It's sort of built into how the system operates, that you get your awesome, cool story that you get to make, and the players get their awesome, cool story of overcoming it or not overcoming it. Failure is definitely an option. I don't want it to come across like it's not hard sometimes to beat the monsters.
Yeah.
But it's certainly designed around the experts having an edge. And as you play the game, you'll just naturally get better at doing it. And maybe the monsters will have to get a little bit craftier to get the best of you.
You mentioned at the end, even if they're wrong, the players essentially do like a report on the monster from what they've understood. What happens to that report after a game? Is that something that the narrator uses in a future game if they end up using the same monster again, or?
So yeah, essentially the report becomes a thing that the narrator can draw upon. Importantly, it's for the world. It's what people think. It's closer to the official story, if you know what I mean. It's not actually true unless they happen to get it right. It's what the official story is. And narrators can have quite a bit of fun with that when they do use the same monster again later, if the players happen to get everything wrong and the monster survived. The monster comes back, it still works the same way it did last time, and the characters might be very confused because they thought they had it right, and then suddenly the murders are all happening again and they don't know what's going on anymore.
One of my favorite things to do is teasingly joke with my players or play a lighthearted trick on them, and I feel like that's something I would do to my players.
Absolutely.
How do you expect your players to feel leaving a session or ending a campaign?
Most of the time I want them to feel like they learnt something or that they are becoming an expert. A lot of games want them to feel tense or scared or, you know, like, oh, we only just made it through that. But Gilmoril's not really like that. I wanted a game that let you... It's a power fantasy, but you aren't powerful. You're smart. I wanted people to feel like they were outsmarting the monster and thus the system. A lot of times I've had players come up to me and say, oh, hey, I found a workaround. If I just use XYZ and do that 3 times, I could kill a monster in 2 turns. And like they look at me expectant to be like, oh no, how you've beaten me. But yeah, cool, that's what I want you to do. Yeah. And because the monsters use the same rules, if they set up the same ambush for you, you're in trouble. Like, that's good. I want you to feel that way. I want you to feel like you know what you're doing. Yeah. And so I had to build a system that encouraged that rather than took it away. So there's no DCs, there's no hidden twists or tricks. It's just you versus the monster's wit, essentially. And you all have the same tools and you use them as you can.
Very nice. Yeah, I think that oftentimes, I don't know, maybe sometimes players really enjoy shocking their GMs, but going back to your point of the narrator is not necessarily there to tell the party what to do. The party's there to tell the narrator what they want to do or what they think. And I think this really supplements that nicely, where your players being able to find a workaround really added to the deeper thinking that they were able to do, instead of focusing on rolling a higher number and positioning alone, for example. For anybody who's interested in getting their hands on Gilmoril, how would they go about that? And do you have anything that people can walk away with today to start trying it out?
I absolutely do. So right here, I have the quick start guide for Gilmoril, Technogothic Nightmare. The digital version and all supporting materials is available at talesuntoldrpg.com at the free PDFs tab. If you go there, you'll be able to find absolutely everything. You'll even find a version of the book that has all of the mention of the included hunt stripped from it, so that you can safely hand it to your players and let them roam free through the book without spoiling anything for themselves. And as a side tidbit, you'll also find one of our earlier games, Luck. Remember that Luck system I brought up? It's just that. It's just that part of Gilmoril sectioned out, so you can play with brand new players without having any of the crunchy rules there.
I like that. What could players hope to find on your backer kit for helping to back you?
Well, obviously, we are big goal is to get the book printed. We want to be able to get a print run of these books made and out into people's hands as soon as possible. On top of that, depending on how well we do, we're looking at things like dice, custom dice for the setting, limited edition special dice, because who doesn't like collecting dice? And I'll say, even though we don't use a D20 in the game, I made sure to include them in the custom dice sets because everyone loves a good D20. We've got special collectible coins that we're looking at doing. Of course, on top of the hardcover, we are also doing a PDF version, naturally, but we're also making sure we have a very accessible EPUB version available for anyone with an e-reader, because I know that's getting very popular now, and I want to make sure everyone can use this to the best of their ability. We are also doing a special art book. All of the art from the game, as well as the short stories written for the book and all those other things, are in a separate art book, so everyone can flip through and find everything, maybe find some additional parts of the mystery and lore of the world. And also, I can make sure to avoid putting too much microfiction in the core book, because I know that's certainly something indie gamers have had to put up with quite a lot in the past.
That sounds really, really exciting, and I can't wait personally to be able to try this, not only in person or with a PDF, but also eventually on Hedron.
Yeah, and I will say as well, we do have Hedron integration coming up, obviously. I've been working on that with Varun, but until then, the form fillable PDFs are there. You can grab some dice with your friends and play online right now, just over Discord or any messaging service. But Hedron will be coming soon. We're on it. We're going to be there.
I am super excited to try that out, and thank you so much for giving me your time today.
No worries. Thanks for having me.